Hello, beautiful people. My name is Rochelle Innocent, and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. And we are so thrilled to be offering one of the first of its kind digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments, enabling parents and children to connect from all around the world. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions and to create space on all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing a children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments, both socially and politically, that will enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Sunday. We actually just dropped a thought piece this past Sunday, so be sure to meander over to the website and check out our online content. Now, if it is the case that you are looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available on 12 different podcast platforms for your listening leisure, and we provided you with access to the links in the description down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like these conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. Let's get into it. Allô les meufs et les mecs. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today our topic of discussion is mental wellness. And on the topic of mental wellness, I am in a way of sorts continuing the conversation that we had in our earlier video this week on indecisiveness. But today I want to focalize on choice and what choices are and what choices are not, so that all of us feel more liberated, feel more empowered when we have the onus of making choices for ourselves. And I think a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the pressure that comes with choice are the assumptions that we have around what the choices mean for us. And I want to challenge some of those assumptions with you here today. So for me, I love choice. I love being able to exact and execute on my choices. I even love weighing out the pros and cons, the do's and don'ts, the consequences that come with the choices that I make. And I'm comfortable carrying the weight of those choices, recognizing that those choices are mine to make, right? When we talk about life decisions, a lot of us still don't have that freedom and flexibility, right? And I think that if you're born into an environment where you feel like having a choice when it comes to your own life is a privilege, then I think for those of us who have all the choices, we can make any choice that we want. It can be polarizing, right? To have both of those perspectives in one community. One person who rarely is able to make a choice. There's a lot of people who feel inclined to make choices for them, whereas the other person, like, whether they do or don't do something, very few people have a say or have input or, really play into how they navigate their life path. And that can in and of itself be daunting. So I want to kind of draw some middle ground between those two situations and circumstances in this conversation. And the first thing that I want to say is choices are part of our lived experiences as human people, as human beings. And I think that there has been so much progress done from people prior that had such a huge cost to associated to it, that any of us who have the freedom to carry the weight of our choices, we really need to bear that freedom with a lot of recognition that it came with a battle, right? A lot of us had to fight to have the basic choices that we have now, right? Even something as simple as like where you sit on public transportation was like a choice we needed to fight for. And I think sometimes we are allocated peace and not having to think about the weight and the power in choice because of the people who spent too much time thinking about it. But now here we are now, and I think the one thing to say is if you don't have full autonomy over your choices, is definitely something to push towards. But in pushing towards it, just recognize that your choices are not a prison, right? And I think a lot of us struggle with choices and in making choices for ourselves because we feel imprisoned by our choices. We are born into rhetorics where, if you make that choice, you need to make your bed, and it's like a lifelong prison sentence. And I am of the mindset that absolutely no, it's not, right? Like, I'm comfortable making choices, recognizing, hey, this didn't play out in reality how it did in my mind. Time for me to backpedal right out of this choice. And I think that that's life, right? Like, there are certain choices, there are certain commitments that we can make, recognizing that we need to have follow through, we need to be committed. It's about honesty, it's about integrity. But I think anything that impacts our life at a fundamental level, if you realize that, you made a choice fundamentally wrong about the assumptions that you had around what that choice would garnish to you, then by all means pivot out of it. I am not going to be made prisoner of my ill-informed, naive choices. Not going to happen. But it also means that I'm also very careful when I make choices, because I don't want to be put in a position where the consequences of that choice tie me to someone for life and it was a mistake, right? Like, those are the kind of choices that could really be a nightmare, but they're also choices that we can avoid making if we take the time and do our due diligence. So our choices don't need to be a prison if we exercise a certain degree of caution, of judgment. We give ourselves the time to make the right choice. We do some investigation. There's so many things that we can do to be sure that we are, my second point, making informed choices. Any choice that has to do with your life needs to be an informed choice. It can't just be based on an ideal or an imagination of how things are going to turn out. It's best to do some research to see, what you're up against, to see what kind of opposition you'll be up against. What are the barriers to entry? And this isn't to deter you, but it's to prepare you so that when struggles and hardships and challenges come up, and they will, if your choice is significant and has an impact and is going to create some degree of change in your life, then at least don't let yourself be blindsided. There are certain things that we will be blindsided by, but a lot of things in this digital era, the era of knowledge acquisition, we can have a heads up. We can have ourselves a little bit of a heads up. And I am of the mindset, as much as I do to prepare, there are certain things that you can't know until you know them experientially. So I really do demarcate between book knowledge or knowledge that you get through a secondary or tertiary sort of voice, but then there's the lived experience in and of itself. And I think the life we lead is going to be an amalgamation of both, about amalgamation of adopting the wisdom of others before us to circumvent situations that we just really don't need to go through, but also going through those really tough situations because we made a choice, and because of that choice we now have the lived experience as to why that wasn't the right choice. And even that, all of that plays into the beauty and the artistry of the tapestry of each and every one of our lives. So never a need to regret, and never also a reason to lay the burden of your choices on someone else. And I think that's a lot of power, right? I think choices are very powerful. I think how our life evolves is a very significant, very deep, fundamental thing. And anyone who is trying to extricate your ability to make those choices is a problem. For me, those people are a threat, right? And it could be a dynamic thing. It could be that, they have a hard time letting go. They call it love. And, is it love if, they get triggered by you wanting to exercise your autonomy? I mean, probably not the kind of love that I am really, that's not the kind of love that is palatable to me, but I question whether it should be palatable at all. I don't think that someone feeling inclined to broaden their range of choice by diminishing the capacity to choose of others is a healthy desire, nor should it be desire that we satisfy. But for each and every one of us struggling with choice, struggling to make choices for our lives, it's a struggle worth bearing. It's a muscle worth developing, because the more you develop it, the better you are at making the right choices for you and learning very quickly, pivoting almost on the fly when you see that, hey, this choice wasn't right, but always giving yourself permission to pivot. No choice should be like a lifelong prison sentence. I mean, there are choices that will come with consequences, and some of those consequences undoubtedly are responsibilities that you might have to carry, but it doesn't mean you live a life of misery, right? And any choice that you make, regardless of what consequences you bear, regardless of what new responsibilities kind of come as a result of those choices, like, you don't have to choose to be miserable, right? And I think that that's really important, that happiness is a choice in and of itself, and you can choose to be happy in the circumstance or the trajectory or the situation that you're in while you're choosing different paths to kind of get out of that situation. So I thought that this was an important conversation worth having. I understand that a lot of us, our perceptions of choice is very deeply influenced by the cultures that we are raised in, by some of the tradition and the norms, and those can be really hard mental barricades to break through, and just cognitive blocks, really, when we think about what it is we want to do and how much choice we feel we personally have in executing towards those objectives. But I'm here to say, like, you have all the choice, right? If it is the case that you don't want to make a choice because there's a consequence that you don't want to deal with, then that's a choice, right? But call it all what it is, so that you can start to develop more comfort in making choices for you, right? And for the people that you care about, where it is appropriate, of course. Now, that was it for today, but definitely not all. It's a bit of a cliffhanger. I'm just kind of dropping it right there, because I do think that choice, the conversation around choice, there's so many juxtapositions around it, right? And I like to talk about it. I would be talking about it from like a Canadian perspective, but there's so much history in my personal life. Like, my personal identity is so deeply influenced by the history of choice and decision making, and people before me making the choice to battle and to struggle and to fight so that I can have this degree of freedom and liberty and exercising the choices that I have made, pertaining to my education, pertaining to like my religion, pertaining to my relationship status, like every aspect of my life. Were it not for the people that came before me, the generations before me, it would be radically different than what it is now, right? So I am like super cognizant, always very, I'm always very aware and deeply appreciative of the sacrifice that was made so that I can sit comfortably in my decision-making seat, right? And I know that it was a sacrifice that I didn't have to bear. It was violence that I don't need to exact or experience, because it was experienced on my behalf. So because of that, I bear the weight, the responsibility, the burden of choice with so much grace, with so much strength, with so much appreciation, because I know so many people just aren't here yet. And I know that so many people sacrificed their lives for me to be in this position. So I thought it was really important to come on here and to have that conversation with you, to give you that food for thought, to give you that little nugget of truth that I sit on all the time when I think about choice. And oftentimes it's what settles me when I feel overwhelmed by choice, when I'm not really quite sure what decision to make. I feel like, what a position of power to be in, to not be sure, but to know that at some point you'll make a choice, and it's your choice to make. No one's going to take that choice from you. You know what I'm saying? In any case, that was it for today, but definitely not all. Now, before letting you go, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we will be going live at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future, on our Facebook page. So definitely be sure to tune in. Now, these events are paid events, so if you do see yourself participating in our community on an ongoing basis, then I do suggest that you take a look at one of our package plans. Yes, so we do offer package plans over and above our live events, as well as access to webinars and workshops largely focused on self-mastery over and above those events. And we look forward to seeing all of you tune in and being the hashtag game changer in our growing game-changing community, being part of the change that you want to see, allowing us a small role to play in your journey. So thank you so much again for tuning in, and I look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We are on the road to 1K, so I do invite you to follow us on all of our social media platforms, and we'll talk to you later.